Candles have so many different areas that they can screw them up, right? So everybody thinks candles very simple. You just melt some wax, throw it into a little pot, add a wick, ta-da, you're done. Not that simple. Biggest thing you need to find out from the customer right off the bat, what solvent they're using. So it's going to be what wax product that they're making. So for them, solvent being wax, it's either soy, which is the most common, and paraffin. There's probably 6 or 7 other blends underneath this. Doesn't matter. These are the 2 biggest ones that you're going to see from all of our customers. So there's this whole marketing ploy right now that soy, 100% natural, so everybody likes to use it for the marketing. Paraffin is more of a stiff wax, and honestly the best is a mix between the 2, but paraffin is completely synthetic. It's actually derived out of oil. So if oil prices go up, so does paraffin. Soy is more stable for the most part because the feedstock, and there's just so much, it's a commodity. Soy and paraffin, 2 main ingredients, completely different fragrances. So soy is what we're going to start with. There's certain solvents that work better. So one of them is DOA. Not dead on arrival, right? This is actually dioctyl adipate. And I know being here a week, you're like, yeah, all these great chemicals, I don't need to know half this crap. You really don't. But DOA needs to be the solvent that they're actually using, or BB, which is benzyl benzoate. Okay. Both of these solvents work great. There's one more, which is IPM, and that is isopropyl myristate. So these 3 solvents work great for soy. Now, if you ended up using a paraffin fragrance for a soy customer, usually the first thing they say is, well, it doesn't go in very well. Okay? What they mean by going in is when you actually heat the wax and you add the fragrance on top of it, they stir it and it looks like water and oil. It keeps beating and separating. It doesn't want to go together, right? So that separation, it's not soluble. If they tell you that, most likely this is the problem. So let's say customer calls in their candle company and they say, hey, I want your blueberry. So you look on the website, you find the great blueberry, you send it to them, and then they call you back and say, well, this blueberry is not really what I was looking for. I'm having problems. Okay, what problems are you having? Well, I can't get it to go in. There could be many other issues other than the wrong solvent, because usually the ones that we have on the website will really go into most products. But if they're 100% soy and they have one that has DEP, which is phthalates, you'll hear this a lot. I want to make sure that my product is phthalate free. That's DEP. Okay. The reason why they don't like this is it's an oxygenator. So what it does, it eats oxygen out of whatever it touches. So the main reason this product was made is it's a plasticizer. So what it does is, you know, have you ever had a kid's toy that was hard plastic like a Lego, and then like a baby's toy is almost like flexible? They use plasticizers to actually process the plastic and make it pliable. Now, as long as you're not getting it on you, you're fine. So a lot of people are like, well, it's used in the manufacturing. That's horrible. Not really, because the kid's not going to eat the toy, right? And touching it, it's not going to be used actually as like licking it and putting it in the body. Like once it's used in the processing, there's nothing left, right? But a plasticizer, why do we use it in candles? It's a cheap solvent and it works really good in paraffin. So that's why it's used on this side. Now, if it was used in something that's going to be in water, it'll eat the oxygen out of the water. If you soaked it all over your skin, it would block oxygen from getting into your system, right? So they've linked it to like birth defects and other stuff like that over heavy long-term exposure. So everybody reads phthalate and they freak out. It's not banned anywhere. So you know how they love to ban stuff, right? If they found that it was a high enough threat, they'd ban its use completely. They go through millions of metric tons of that product in the United States. So it's one of those ingredients that people just hear some of the bad stuff that can happen, right? And then they freak out and say, oh, well, we're just not going to use it. We're not going to have it. It's used in 90% of paraffin fragrances. So when you go to a store and you flip over a candle and you see the backside of it, especially like a Walmart, a Dollar Tree, any of the bigger guys, they're still using phthalates. Why? Because it's getting burned up in a candle. So you're not touching it, you're not indigesting it, you're nothing, it's just getting burned out, right? But you'll hear customers a lot, I want to make sure it's phthalate free. I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, just because people freak out over it, that it'll slowly get faded out, right? These 3 solvents are the main, and all those work for soy. Phthalates work good for paraffin. Now, with paraffin, can you use some of these other solvents? Yes. But can you use DEP for soy? No. Totally over your head, isn't it? You're like, whatever, that's a chemical name, it's something I'll never use, and yeah. What you'll hear though, you'll hear phthalate. You'll hear customers say, hey, is this fragrance phthalate free? Are you using phthalates in it? Because it's so widely used in candles that they know that it's in the process. So sometimes just they'll recommend they don't want it in their product. Usually because they're marketing that way. They're saying they're not using phthalates. Okay. So, wax. What wax are they using? Depends on what solvent the fragrance is going to be used for. Now, this is just for your information, right? If a customer calls and says, hey, I need a blueberry and I'm having a problem, that goes into a project in the lab. So it's not like this is something that you're going to be stuck with. It's just to give you information so you understand what they're doing in the lab. Okay? All right. Wax, soy, paraffin, different solvents. Now let's go into what customers are going to call and say they're having problems with. Biggest one I think you're going to hear is leaching or weeping or seeping. What that means is that the oil is putting like little teardrops on the candle, and it'll come out of the side, it'll come everywhere. What's happening is the wax is rejecting the fragrance and it's kicking it out. So the reasons that can cause that is the solvent that's used. We'll put carrier oil. Or the percentage, the usage. So let's say they're putting in 10% or even 15%. They're forcing too much oil to be in that candle. So that's what's causing it to weep out. Okay, the next thing could be the dyes. They could be using too heavy of a load of dye. That mixed with the fragrance, that's causing it to kick out. The other stuff that you'll see with candles is wicking problems. So that's that wick that goes down the middle of the candle. So they'll say, well, you know, my flame's extinguishing itself. That could be a fragrance issue because what's happening is the fragrance actually starts going up the wick and then it burns out at the top of the flame, right? So it's just like a big straw going into a pool of wax. So whenever this heats up, it actually forces everything to get pulled through the wick. So the wax and the fragrance get pulled through it. If your fragrance has a lot of natural ingredients or resins or things of that nature, it can actually clog up the wick. And then all of a sudden your flame goes out. Now, is that usually the problem? No. Usually what they do is they'll come up with some great idea to get some glass vase like this, and then the candle will be way down here, and then they'll have the wrong wick. There won't be enough oxygen in here, and it goes out. And then they're like, oh, it was your fragrance. And you're like, okay, well, no one else is having a problem with this fragrance, so let me kind of find out what's going on with your product. And then you'll find out that they're doing some small shaft or something that's not working. Or you'll find out they're using the completely wrong wick altogether. So there's thousands of wicks that they can use. So there's cotton wicks and zinc wicks and different coatings and some that self-extinguish. And they got wood wicks, which are those little wood ones that crackle like Virginia Candle has. So there's so many variations that you can use. The first thing they want to blame is the fragrance. Fragrance is the most expensive part of the product. So they're getting the container for 50 cents. They've got 50 cents worth of wax in there. The wicks, 3 cents, right? And they got $2 worth of fragrance. So when anything goes wrong, they're like, your fragrance screwed it up, right? Which is fine, because then we're going to actually go back and find out what went wrong. So is it the dye? Is it the fragrance? Is it the wax? Is it the wick? Usually just talking with them, I can kind of figure it out pretty quick. It's either they're putting too high of a load of something, they're using the wrong wick, they may have a candle that's big enough that they need 3 or 4 wicks, they're only using 1. So